I am your host, Nicole Will, and we thank you for joining us as we navigate the world with your aging loved one. We are here to come alongside elders, family members, and the senior living community as we explore the world of aging and elder care with helpful resources, informative interviews, and approachable conversations. We get to do this together, so join us on our journey, and this is the willGather podcast. Today, for our interview, I am interviewing P K Beville. She is the founder of Second Wind Dreams, an internationally known nonprofit organization created to change the perception of aging through fulfilling elders' dreams and offering educational programs to help caregivers understand the physical and mental challenges facing those with dementia. PK created the internationally acclaimed virtual dementia tour. She will share with us all about that and her creation of Second Wind Dreams and how we can support caregivers, how we can walk alongside them as they maybe receive that diagnosis, and what does that successful support system look like, and how we are going to encourage people that are starting this journey with their loved ones. So join me in welcoming PK Beville. Hi, PK. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's a pleasure to have you on our podcast.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, it's so lovely to meet you. And I always love learning about people, their background, and what inspired them to create the organization that they're a part of. So, can you share with us a little bit about yourself?
I'd be happy to. Unlike you, who has a background in a grandmother or a grandparent that you were seeing being cared for, I came into this completely blind. When I graduated from my master's degree, I got a job working in an adolescent treatment facility. And I hated it. I hated it from the minute I got there to the minute I left. And that's not like me.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the kids I had in therapy's father owned a chain of 11 nursing homes. And he asked me why he couldn't get services like we do for adolescents for older adults in long-term care. And I said, well, dadgummit, I have no idea why not. That's so wrong. Let me see what I can figure out. So after a few years of bloodying my nose and skinning my knees, through God's grace, I was able to develop a series of assessments for people living in long-term care to determine what we could do to serve them better. So I started with his chain of 11 and grew pretty rapidly and loved every minute of it. There was no doubt about it. But one of the things that I noticed was on the incomplete sentences test for depression, I would ask the question, finish this sentence with the way you really feel. I wish. So they're supposed to finish that. Now, you would expect you and I to say things like, I wish I could take a cruise. I wish I could see my grandparent because of the pandemic. I wish, and all of those things that you and I would do were not what I was getting from them. I was getting, I wish I could go to the graveside of my wife. I wish I could have a steak dinner. I wish I could go somewhere on a camping trip again. And those are things that got me to my soul. It was like, wow, they are dreaming of things that you and I so take for granted. Even something as small as a cup holder for a wheelchair. You know, you and I, if we had someone like that, we would just go do it. But when you're in long-term care, it doesn't quite work that way. So that created a spark within me that thought, you know what, there's got to be a way that we can make these things happen. So I founded Second Wind Dreams in 1997. We make dreams come true for those in long-term care, home health, hospice, hospitals, just about anywhere that the elders live under the care of a physician. In other words, they need attentive care. And we make dreams come true every day. Just this week, we made a dream come true, even during the pandemic, for a gentleman who is a big sports fan. And because of the pandemic, obviously he hasn't been able to go anywhere, just like the rest of us. But even before the pandemic, he's unable to get out of the nursing home. So what we did was we pulled together a group of NFL and baseball people on Zoom, and they sent him gift packages of signed football from the Falcons, signed baseballs. There was a little league team on Zoom involved, and I mean to tell you, it was a huge deal. We lift up our elders. We include the rest of the elders with it so that they're a part of the dream. But the bottom line of that is that we as a society have had a tendency to put older adults kind of on a shelf. And when you're not product producing anymore and you're not making any revenue, we sort of decide that you're less than needed even in our society, and especially when you're placed in assisted living or whatever the environment might be, away from the rest of society. But even so, when they're living at home, we sort of segregate them there as well. So the founding principle of our organization is that the community takes responsibility for the elders in the elder care community, home health, whatever, to make those dreams come true. So you see what I mean? It's not up to the elder care community. We start taking responsibility for these beautiful people that live there. Well, I prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed about why we couldn't get any money to fund these dreams back in 97, 98, 99, 2000, and we were really struggling. I kept my job of counseling families and elders, and had the great fortune of working with some amazing, amazing people through that period of time. Wrote the book Second Wind, and about my experience in long-term care, and nothing was changing. Nothing was getting better. Continued to pray. Come on, come on, come on. Help me, help me, help me, help me. And we were still making dreams come true, but we were not able to be sustainable. Well, during this time was when I went for my PhD, and my dissertation was to try to figure out how we could increase sensitivity to those living with Alzheimer's disease, of dementia of the Alzheimer's type. So that's when I created the virtual dementia tour. And turns out God had my back the whole time, because I donated the virtual dementia tour to Second Wind Dreams. And that in turn has created the revenue that we need to continue the Dreams program. We still get donations, and we still, a lot of it is, since it's from the community, is in-kind donations, but we have to run the organization. So the virtual dementia tour is, we'll talk a little bit more about that later, I think, but it is our number one revenue producer.
I mean, just to see it all come together, right? And to have those, like you said, those God moments where you can hear that this is going to be something that can sustain the life-giving part of your business is so meaningful. And your mission really is to change that perception of aging. And so you talk about your virtual dementia tour. Can you share with us what exactly is that?
Sure. Well, I think, it's really not rocket science, but when you think about it, you or me or most of the people functioning in our society have no idea what dementia is like. So how do we serve people in a way that is best suited to their needs if we have no idea what those needs are? So what I did was I studied how the brain dies and what the behavioral output of different areas of the brain's death are. For instance, what part of the brain, when it's damaged, is causing them to ask the same things over and over and over again? It's aggravating for you and me, but it's reassurance for them. What part of the brain is causing them to pace? wandering and pacing. What is happening there? So as I studied how the brain is affected by dementia and the behavioral output, then the trick was how to get your normal brain to experience what they're experiencing. And the byproduct is you have greater understanding for what they're going through every day. So I created the tour as a way to, we guard people up in patented equipment that's been researched. We have evidence-based protocols that all our clinicians follow. And you actually are immersed in a dementia-like experience, mid-stage dementia. When you come out, you get a debrief and by a trained clinician who will talk to you about what you just went through and how that applies to your loved one and what can be done better to serve them. And we also have a hospital VDT, we have a nursing home VDT, we have a family VDT, we have retail VDT, we have an airport VDT, we have all different kinds, because when you think about it, the incidence of dementia is at epidemic proportions. I would be willing to wager that if the WHO took a good, healthy look at dementia, it's in pandemic proportions. It's everywhere. So that's what the VDT is. We are in 20 countries now. A little over 3 million people have been through the tour. And we now have a great deal of research about the VDT conducted by a number of hospitals and universities worldwide. So our evidence is very strong.
People have so many different times when they interact with people and they don't know how to properly or appropriately handle situations, and it can really equip them with more information to better understand. Anytime we're putting ourselves in someone's shoes, so to speak, it creates that empathy and compassion. We have a little bit more understanding of what's really going on.
You are so right. And empathy is the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that we are heavily studying at Second Wind Dreams. What are the dynamics of empathy?
Mm-hmm.
What does an empathic family member look like?
Yeah.
What are the characteristics that they need to have?
Mm-hmm.
And how can we help train them for those? Because, you know, when you think about it, these poor families, they're dealing with their loved one and they still know them as they were.
Yeah.
And now they're seeing them in a whole different light,
Mm-hmm.
which is hard to adjust to.
Mm-hmm.
And that adjustment time for families is something that not many people talk about, but it's essential that it happen in a well-learned way.
Yeah. And what did you say too, and we'll talk about this part of that next question, is when you receive that loved one's diagnosis, it's so scary, it's so overwhelming. There's no quote unquote rule book of now here's what this will look like and what to do next, right? I think there's a lot of really good resources out there, but for families, they don't always know where to begin, right? Where to start and how to start the learning process. What would your recommendation be for them? Where should we direct them?
Sure. Well, you know, as with every family's different.
Yeah.
But I will tell you some of the key things that I've noticed in my 40-year career. Families who wait too late to get a diagnosis are getting a knee-jerk response to the diagnosis. They have not encouraged their loved one to get checked out. They have sort of swept it under the rug and nobody's talking about it. One family member is trying to do everything on their own. The rest of the family is not paying attention to what that family member has to say, or just denial. That is such a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
When we begin to see problems with our loved ones, it is important to not be afraid of a conversation and to step up and say, you know, Dad, I want us to go to see a specialist in checking out how you're doing all day long. Don't say, I've noticed that you're repeating yourself 20 times during a conversation, or I've noticed that you keep forgetting where your iPhone is, or I don't attack.
Yeah.
Make it a group effort. Let's go get checked out. It's time.
Yeah.
And I usually say to them, children go to a pediatrician, and there are specialists for older adults, not just in memory care, but the way your medications break down is completely different from adults. You're an older adult now. Let's see a geriatrician and let's get you started down that path. Now, I say all that and understand that in many places there are no geriatricians and no geriatric specialists in rural America. But let me please say this. I encourage you, at least for the diagnostic process, get to a specialist, because so many times there's a misdiagnosis made, and you're told by someone like a GP, general practitioner, who has no experience in geriatrics, will say, hey, yeah, this looks like dementia. Well, slam, that's a big one in the face.
Yeah.
Well, now wait a minute. There are a lot of things that can look like dementia that are not dementia. And that sends the family in a whole wrong tailspin. So please, please, please get a specialist to make this diagnosis for you. Once you have the diagnosis, remember, I'm talking about you being a team player with your loved one. They're not by themselves and you're not by yourself. Keep in mind that when the diagnosis is made, it's usually a slow process through the stages of dementia. Now, there are different types of dementia. Some are saying there's over 200 different types of dementia. The most common are Lewy body, frontal temporal lobe dementia, vascular dementia, Alzheimer's disease. Those are kind of the most common ones, but each one requires a different process of care. So make sure that when you get the diagnosis, if they just say dementia or they just say Alzheimer's disease, your response should be what type?
Yeah.
What type? And then that's going to lead you down the path of whether or not that doctor knows what they're talking about, and whether or not what you need to do next. So let's say that your family member has now been diagnosed with, let's say, Alzheimer's disease. The first thing I encourage families to do is research, 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 research. As we said earlier, there are a lot of resources out there that you can go to. I recommend the larger ones. They have more bandwidth. AARP has great caregiving information. The Alzheimer's Association has great stuff. The Alzheimer's Foundation has great stuff. Two different organizations. Also, there's a great resource out there called the Alzheimer's Reading Room. I love that site because you can go there and you can go as deep as you want or as broad as you want. And sometimes it just helps to put a keyword up there. Dad is refusing to take a bath, and it's going to give you some ideas and resources. Also, there's a new website or a new program out there. It's called the Dementia Dictionary. It's a fascinating new thing where families can go online to Dementia Dictionary, and they can input a problem, and experts will log on and give you responses that are vetted, so that you're not just getting off the cuff, like I see a lot of families pose questions on Facebook about their loved one. Well, some of those responses aren't vetted, and I worry about those. So research, research, research. And then the next thing to do is get a plan. What are we going to do as a family? How are we going to handle this? And I do a whole in-service. In fact, we have it on our website on family caregiving. You can go to our family caregiving part of secondwind.org, and you'll see some free services. Also, we are doing in March, in a couple of weeks, if you go to our website, we're also doing Caregiver Connections, which we want you to log on as caregivers. And we have experts on there, and it's for families. So log on there. It's just an hour and a half of your time. If you just sit there as a mouse, that's fine too. But what I'm saying is there's so much out there that you can reach for that if I were you, I'd probably spend the first several weeks after the diagnosis doing nothing but checking this stuff out.
And I loved your insight into plan ahead, plan.
Right.
In so many conversations I'm having, that's the one theme that is really sticking out, is the ability to feel like you're a little bit prepared, even though no one is prepared for that diagnosis. But if we can at least start the process of thinking through some of those steps and having some things in place, we feel a little bit more less out of control. The ability to gather our community, and like you said, we're in this together with our loved one, and being able to do that together is important also.
It really is. And I think it's getting better. I think families need to do a better job. And I'm going to talk to each of you family members out there.
Yeah.
You need to do a better job of not covering it up. When you see things, get busy and don't hide it from your friends and your family. They're in this with you too, and they want to be in this with you too, but they don't know how unless you help them. So it is a group effort, and yeah, we got to do a better job of talking about it. My 93-year-old father with vascular dementia lives with us and has for 5 years. Now here, I'm a geriatric specialist. You'd think I'd know how to deal with all this, but quite frankly, it ain't easy.
Yeah.
It ain't easy.
Yeah.
So, meals and memory and hygiene and all of those caregiving tasks fall on my husband and I, but we also reach out to the rest of the family. Now with the pandemic, that's really hard to do, but they come over and do window visits, and we're going to start getting him back out in the next couple of weeks because he's been double vaccinated, as have we. Okay. So yeah, there's a light at the end of that tunnel, families, but please lean on other people. They want to help.
Yeah, they do. You mentioned something about not ignoring maybe some of those signs. And my thought is, do you feel like people do that because of what our society's perception of dementia is? And where do you think we stand right now in that? And how can we, as a greater society, help support people in that journey as they're supporting their loved one? That's a big question,
wow,
I know, but
yeah, it's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
Let's see. Well, first, let me take the last question first. I think our society is slow to the punch on this. Some societies are better at viewing dementia in older adults, but not much better. Being in 20 countries, I can tell you that it's dementia is dementia, and family responses are tough everywhere. But I also can tell you that the outside community is doing an abysmal job of knowing how to embrace family members with loved ones with dementia. I see a lot of family members not taking advantage of the Family Leave Act when they need to. Loved ones can certainly do that. Employers should be supportive of time like that should be taken. And so I think society has a long way to go, but the only people who are going to change it are the family members. You're the ones that are going to have to step up and do it. When somebody says to you, gosh, this is something, what can I do to help? Don't just say, well, I think we're okay for now. Man, oh man, if I could come across this line and slap the fire out of you for that, I'd do it.
Yeah.
What you should say is, I'm going to call you in a month after, since we got this diagnosis, and I'm going to let you know what kinds of things as we get organized you can do, and then follow up. Help us by bringing over a meal, maybe every week or so.
Yeah.
Help us by giving me a chance to get out of the house for 2 hours. If you just come over, I'll talk to you about how to pay attention to dad or mom. If you don't do that, nobody's going to know to help, and you're going to be all alone. So start that from the beginning. If you could take dad to church this Sunday, and I'd like to have a Sunday to myself for a little while, anything like that.
Yeah.
But do you do that? No, you do not. So please do that.
I'm so guilty of saying what you mentioned. Oh, we're
We all
okay, but I'll let you know. I also think that if we're speaking to people out there, it's hard to, as a person that's being asked that question, right? We feel bad being really specific in how we need help. And so I also want to encourage people just to say, I'm going to drop a meal off on Sunday. Saturday is my free day. I'm going to come sit with dad for 2 hours, and just saying what your availability is and filling in those needs, because that can, as a family member that's trying to coordinate so many things, we've got a lot on our plate and we don't always know specifically what we might need. But just the act of someone doing something can be really, really helpful too.
Sure.
Yeah.
If we could educate the public to do that, that would be great. But I find that it's rare that you're going to get somebody who's just going to automatically know to bring. So I have a list of things that you can ask for. And if you're not comfortable asking for a meal a week or whatever, tell them, well, these are the things that I need help with. And if you could help me with any one of these, it would be wonderful. We're starting a new thing with dad where John and I are going to need to start getting away a little bit. Everybody needs a break. And dad's not comfortable staying with other family members unless they come to him. And that's tough to do. So we're going to start a new thing with a granny cam in the little apartment we have for him. We're going to have people checking on him during the day, and we're going to have people bringing him meals so that John and I can get away. You see, that's a good way to start thinking about respite. Because eventually dad's going to get to the place where we're going to really need a break. Like, he's going to need to be somewhere. That's a whole different conversation.
I'm so glad you're thinking about that and doing that for yourself. It's so important.
4 years is long enough.
Yes. So if we could impart our listeners with, I always love to leave them with some encouragement. What would you tell caregivers as they're starting this journey with their loved one?
I am so glad you asked that, because I have several things that I'd like to leave you with. The first is focus on the positives. You still got your mom or your dad or your loved one. You're going to be on this journey together. You're going to garner all the support you can. Focus on what your loved one can do well. Continue to lift that up. Try not to invade too much on your loved one, because you want them to be as independent as possible for as long as possible, but be judicious in that by focusing on the positives. Learn all you can, as I said earlier. Be proactive. Let's say that you've got someone coming in who is a paid in the home caregiver, and you start seeing that something might not be right. Don't waste time. Just call up the agency and say, I'd like to have somebody else come out. And they're going to ask you why. And your response can be, I just want to try someone else. You're not beholden to that. So be proactive. When you see your loved one wandering in the middle of the night, and that this could place them in danger and could place you in danger, Be proactive. Get with the physician. Talk to the physician about it. Make sure that you toilet them well right before bed. Realize that when the brain is experiencing what they're experiencing in the middle of the night, a dream could happen and they know it's real. So they're getting up to check it out. And they can't be still well. So when they do that, get them in a rocking chair, give them some warm milk, talk to them quietly, wrap them in a nice warm blanket, and in 15-20 minutes, put them back in the bedroom as though you were doing it for the first time. Those are little thoughts about how you can turn a negative into a positive and be proactive when it happens. And the last thing that I want to recommend is, so often we as family members, when we talk to our professional people, we'll say something like, well, Dad's up all night long. I'm going to stick with that one right there. Well, that's probably not true. So what I need you to do, families, is to pay attention to when things really happen and document it. You'll find that there are specific times that they're getting up at night. And once you know that schedule, that's going to help the physician know how the half-life of the meds are working, whether or not you need to decrease drinking anything before. There's just a whole host of things. So, and then join a support group. There are some great support groups. I think, Nicole, you have some there. And we also, I mentioned the support group that's coming up this month. Just join a support group somewhere. Even if you just be the mouse, it'll be a great way. And love up on your loved one. The roles have changed a bit. They still need to be touched and held, and their hair brushed and loved up on and kissed and reinforced. We find that reinforcing people with dementia actually helps them feel so much better, and they have less behavioral incidents as a result.
Such great advice, and so encouraging as a lot of us are on this new journey with our loved ones. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome, sweetheart.
Yeah, it's been so lovely. And we will direct people to your website and where they can learn more about Second Wind Dreams and all about your organization. And it's truly, truly wonderful. It's been just a pleasure to work with all of you. And I'm so excited to see what you guys do next and to cheer you on my end. So appreciative. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome, Nicole. Thank you for having me.
So I have to tell you about Jimmy Zolo and his new company, Joe and Bella. Our paths had crossed, and I'm so glad they did. It was such a pleasure to meet Jimmy. He is passionate about older adults. He told me that after both of his grandparents moved into a care community, his family's world was turned upside down, and they really became caregivers overnight. As you know, being a caregiver to someone close to you is often overwhelming. There's so much for you to manage, even with the support of a care community, like making sure your loved one has all of the products that they need and keeping them stocked when things run out, keeping inventory on what you have and what you don't. Jimmy also had that problem, and he was scrolling through all of these product reviews across the internet, and like most of us in the sandwich generation, we don't have enough hours in the day. It can feel really overwhelming and time-consuming and frustrating. We don't know what we're always looking for, and he wished there was a way to shop for his grandparents. Then the pandemic hit, preventing visitation to care communities, making this process even more difficult. So Jimmy decided to launch his own business to solve this problem. He founded Joe and Bella to make shopping for older adults simple. They carry everything from comfy clothes to creative gifts. They even have toiletries that can be automatically reordered and tech that makes caregiving easier. Everything all in one location. What I love, and I know you guys will love too, is that each and every product on Joe and Bella has been carefully selected by caregiving experts. Jimmy is so generous. He is giving an exclusive offer to our listeners of our podcast. You can use the promo code GATHER to receive 10% off your first purchase at joeandbella.com. That code is GATHER, GATHER, for 10% off at joeandbella.com. You don't want to miss this offer. Head to their website and check it out. Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed our episode, please subscribe and give us 5 stars. In all honesty, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening to our episode.